everyone. Glad you all enjoyed my last review, because this time I have a surprise for you guys. Instead of doing one, I'm going to be doing a double VHS review for you all. So I'm going to be reviewing both The Gallant Old Engine and Thomas Meets the Queen in this video. We have some pretty good choices this time, so let's kick this review off with The Gallant Old Engine. The Gallant Old Engine and Other Thomas Stories was first released on August 6, 1996 by Video Treasure's Anchor Bay Entertainment. Coincidentally, this came out the same day as the '96 reprint of Percy's Ghostly Trick. This tape contains 6 episodes, all from Season 4, narrated by George Carlin, and a bonus music video at the end. This tape didn't really get that much recognition, so to speak, as there were only a few other times this was released. One in '99 with the Beth label, and in 2000 with a blue ink. The second cover, renamed to Gallant Old Engine, was then released on July 24th, 2001. And again, bonus wooden railway train included. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the tapes. As for the DVDs, it was first re-released on July 22nd, 2008, completely retitled to Henry and the Elephant. The DVD was then released again sometime in 2009. What do you know? Wooden train. No shocker. But also this DVD had a Press and Sounds cover, which I'm not exactly sure how rare these are, but I do know they're not very common. Anyways, I can kind of see why they retitled this in the end, as Elephant is the first episode that plays. But here's an interesting note. Even though the DVD is retitled to Henry and the Elephant, it still opens up with the Gallant Old Engine title card. That's not exactly the brightest move they made, but again I can kinda see why they did that, as certain tapes would usually start off with whatever name was on the cover first. There are some tapes out there that whatever was the cover title did not always play as the first episode. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the history. Now to discuss the episodes. Our 6 episodes on this tape are as follows: Henry and the Elephant, You Can't Win, Special Attraction, Passengers and Polish, Gallant Old Engine, and Fish. So let's begin with our first episode, Henry and the Elephant. The big engines are complaining about their work until they are cheered up when a circus comes to Sodor. After the circus leaves, Topham assigns Henry to clear a tunnel which shelters an escaped elephant, nearly spooking the workmen and Henry. Now, a lot of people complained that this was meant to be an original Season 1 episode, leading into the Percy stories in the Railway series. Instead, it was pushed back as a Season 4 episode. I can't say for certain why they chose to do that, but there's something very odd about where this episode is placed. Weirdly enough, the way it's filmed makes it almost feel like it belongs in Season 4, even though it technically doesn't. I mean, when you really think about it, this story doesn't have anything to do with tender engines, which was what the strike was all about in Season 1. Gordon and James's incidents did, but what does this have to show? So even though it is out of place, it wouldn't have worked if this one incident was a part of the tender engine strike. So they literally could have adapted this story for any season, and it would have affected very little. I don't know how it works, but it does. Regardless of that, I still think it's pretty good and still remains as one of my favorite Henry stories. I applaud those who actually put effort into this to try and make it work for the season. 10 out of 10. On with the second episode, You Can't Win. Stuart teases Duke about being old and that he'll need help one day if he breaks down. While taking passengers to their boat, Duke's valves begin to leak steam, and Stuart and Falcon are sent to help. But Duke schemes up a plan to pay Stuart back for all the teasing. I'm just gonna say it, but I think this is Duke's greatest moment. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this particular one because, quite honestly, the main focus is either on the Grandpuff two-parter or Bulldog, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but this episode really needs some more recognition. It really, emphasizes how much elders go through, and we wouldn't know any of that or how they feel on occasion unless, again, we go through those same experiences in life. If there's one thing I absolutely love about this episode, though, it's George Carlin's Duke voice. I've said it before, I don't know what it is, but his gruff voice just suits Duke.
I mustn't disappoint my friends. Nothing of the sort. This is routine maintenance. That'll be the day. Poor old engine. It's no good, Stuart. You can't win.
So you can see why I love it so much. And also, the scenery is really nice to look at, and the music is always a pleasure to listen to. I stand by my word when I say, I think this is Duke's best moment of the series. 10 out of 10. Now with our third episode, Special Attraction. Toby is to be a special attraction for the seaside visitors, but is turned down when they run out of room in their parade. Meanwhile, Percy has to collect some trucks from the harbor while dealing with a very bad-tempered barge named Bulstrode. So this is basically two stories meshed into one, which to some might not work out so good, but I personally don't have that much of a problem with this one either. For whatever reason, this was the standout episode to me on this tape. Why? Well, I liked the fact that it was two stories in one, even though I do admit both stories could have been adapted on a little bit more. Second, I find Carlin's Bulstrode voice absolutely hysterical. Again, even if it's just two lines.
Come on, come on. Why aren't you cars where you should be? Oh, I'm sinking.
Although, I have to admit after this, Bulstrode was pretty much wasted potential. And lastly, this episode features my very favorite crash of the whole series. It's these three things that made this my favorite episode of Season 4. I understand there's going to be some who don't find this episode all that exciting, and that's totally fine. But I will say, I do find this one to be another underrated of the season. I think it honestly deserves just a tiny little bit more recognition. 10 out of 10. On to the fourth episode, Passengers and Polish. Nancy is giving Skarloey a polish as he hears Rheneas is coming home soon. Duncan wants to be polished too, but is denied. Because of this, he grumbles all day as he's taking passengers home and stops on a viaduct in protest. Well, right off the bat, this is my second favorite Duncan story overall. Yes, I know the story is mainly just Duncan complaining about not getting polished or he has too much extra work, I get it. But you know something? That's just Duncan for you. It's a characteristic of his that you just love to hate. And what makes it even more funnier is Carlin's Scotty accent for him.
It isn't fair. Peter Sam gets a special funnel, Sir Handel gets special wheels, passengers get ice cream, but I'm not even polished. All this extra work, it wears an engine out. You always think about the passengers and never about me.
Easy to say, Duncan's voice is another of Carlin's amazing voice work that I absolutely adore. And if it isn't the voice, it's also Duncan's bouncy theme that's one of my personal favorites to listen to.
He sulked all the way.
I get no rest, I get no rest, he muttered.
And yeah, I kinda think this one is underrated too. I'm sensing a pattern here. But anyways, I still enjoyed this episode, even if it's just Duncan being his typical grouchy self. 9 out of 10. On with our fifth episode, Gallant Old Engine. Duncan will not stop grumbling about everything, so Skarloey tells him of how Rheneas braved bad weather and nearly broke down trying to get some passengers home. This was a wonderful backstory to Rheneas' character. The flashback really shows us how brave and courageous Rheneas was to carry on, even though there were so many things against him. And had he not, the railway would have shut down and he and Skarloey would have been out of work. A very bold and again, courageous move for such an oldie. Now there is one tiny little thing that I have to nitpick with, and that being that this is Rheneas's literal first speaking role in an episode, which is kinda sad because he's had so many cameo appearances, and it only took him till now to finally speak. They had him on the back burner for literally half a season. Why they decided to do that? I have no clue either. However, despite this nitpick, I still think it's one of Season 4's best. George Carlin once again astounds me with his narration for this one.
If I fail, he thought to himself, the passengers will be cross and the railway will close. Everything blurred. He was really too tired to make another turn of his wheels, but he did. And another, and another, and another. Finally, tired but triumphant, Rheneas reached the station. "I'm here at last," he wheezed.
This and only a few other stories are why Rheneas is one of my favorite narrow gauge engines. 10 out of 10. And lastly, we have our final episode, Fish. Henry must take an extra set of vans of fish aboard the Flying Kipper, and Duck is sent to help him. Thomas warns Duck about how fish can cause trouble, but takes no notice. As they head up the hill, a faulty tail lamp causes Duck to have an accident, with some very smelly results. Well, as most of you know already, I am a huge sucker for the nighttime themed episodes, and this one does not disappoint. I like the fact that it chose a different dynamic of characters for this, that being Duck and Henry working together. The other thing that I love is, once again, the music.
The only vans available were old ones. They had not been used for a long time. Henry waited impatiently by the quayside as Duck shunted them into position. push hard, puffed Henry. We're doing it, replied Duck. Henry was pulling his train harder than he realized.
It's funny how this crash wasn't even the fault of the engines. As we all know, most crashes were usually their fault because of their arrogance on certain topics, thus leading them into trouble. The faulty tail lamp could have been prevented had the people who are supposed to check that done their job. But that's just a small nitpick. This is another episode that I feel like should have been on more tapes, not counting its sampler release. It's one of George's best narrated stories of Season 4. So yeah, what else can I really say other than the fact that I just love it. 10 out of 10. And before we close off the tape, we have our bonus music video. Really Useful Engine. This song is entirely focused on Thomas. It basically describes the arc that Thomas has gone through and how much of a really useful engine he can be, as he's there for anyone and willing to give a helping hand whatever situation. I feel like this is pretty much the perfect way to describe who Thomas is as a character. I love how the video is a mixture of footage from seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4, showing us some really nice clips of Thomas, including a few deleted shots. This is yet another really iconic song amongst fans young and old. It's one of the many I think some of us can agree, while it is very repetitive in the chorus, it doesn't ruin the song, as it still has quite a catchy beat. Again, it's just the most perfect character arc song for Thomas that all fans can really appreciate. This one will forever remain a memorable classic song. So what do I think about this tape? Well, given my high ratings, I definitely think it's the best tape from Season 4. I don't really have that many problems with it, other than, again, a few small nitpicks. But again, they don't ruin everything about each episode. The stories for each are amazing in their own way. George Carlin did a splendid job with his narrations, and Mike and Jr. once again astounded us with their amazing music scores. hence why this is one of my all-time favorite tapes. This is one that I highly recommend for all Thomas media collectors. Alright, that's one tape down, and one to go. Now it's time to review Thomas Meets the Queen. Thomas Meets the Queen and Other Stories was released on August 19, 1997 by Video Treasure's Anchor Bay Entertainment. Once again, this tape consists of 6 Season 4 episodes, all narrated by George, and a bonus music video. This one was yet another that didn't really get that much recognition. It was only released 2 more times, in '99 with the Beth label, and in 2000 with Black and Blue inks. After that,
it just disappeared.
Hardly anyone even knew that this tape even existed. It remains a mystery as to why it never got an official DVD release. 2 episodes on the VHS were the only 2 that ever made it to later DVDs. The other 4 did not. Why were these specific 4 pulled from ever getting an official DVD release, let alone this title in general? Sad thing is, we may never get an answer. But other than that, that pretty much wraps up the history. So let's move on to the episodes. So our next batch of 6 episodes consists of Mind That Bike, Train Stops Play, Thomas Meets the Queen, Bullseyes, Special Funnel, and 4 Little Engines. So let's start with our first episode, Mind That Bike. Thomas and Percy help out postman Tom Tipper with his mail deliveries often until he is reduced to mail carrying by bike, which is accidentally crushed after hurrying around. So here we are with our first uncommon episode. Notice that this is the last episode of the season, and it plays as the first episode on the tape. And also, it's not a Christmas-themed episode like the last 3 seasons have had to close it off. Wonder why they stopped doing that. But anyways, this episode is kind of a little snooze. Not to mention, it's a bit forgettable given that this is its only tape release. Nothing too major really happens in this particular story, other than Tom's boss who just decides all of a sudden his van is too expensive, gives him a bike, then just says, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get you a new van." Like, what? I guess the only thing I really do like about this is George's Tom Tipper voice. I don't know what it is again, but the voice just oddly suits him.
"Ah," replies Tom, "but where would I be without me van? We make a grand pair. Is that a smart new van I see?" "It is indeed. That accident did me a good turn, Percy. My chief decided a new van would do the job. Much better than another bike, and worth the expense."
So, yeah, there's not really that much I can say about this, other than it's just kind of a meh episode. 7 out of 10. Now comes our second episode, Train Stops Play. It's Stepney's, technical, second day on Topham's Railway and is given the chance to pull some cars. On his way back, they pass by a cricket field and a ball goes flying into one of Stepney's cars. The players chase Stepney with their car Caroline on a wild goose chase to get their ball back. And here is the second uncommon episode. Well, I've already said this before, but I personally don't care about the story of Stepney's. Nothing too big happens here either. When you really look deeply at this almost looks like a very similar plotline to Birdie's Chase, just changed a little bit. I mean, all this for a ball? Are you kidding me? You didn't think to have any spare ones on the side in case a situation like this were to happen? That's kind of dumb. And also, Caroline just comes completely out of nowhere, and there's really not much to her character. But I will admit, George's voice for her is pretty funny.
"I shouldn't be treated like this," she grumbled. "This pace is too hot for my system. It'll fuse all my circuits. Yahoo! That silly train has run into a hole, so we can't catch it. I can go home now."
But I have to remind you all, it doesn't entirely save it. I don't really like this episode too much, but then again, I also don't hate it. It just feels like a very random episode just thrown in. It's one that I can definitely do without. 6 out of 10. On with the third episode, Thomas Meets the Queen, or Paint Pots and Queens for the UK audiences. Sir Topham announces that the Queen is coming to visit, and everyone wonders who will pull the royal train. Henry believes it'll be him until an accident with a painter blows his chance. So Topham forgives Thomas and Gordon for their previous accidents, and lo and behold, Gordon is chosen to pull the special. This is clearly a continuation from Takes a Dip and Down the Mine. What the hell is it doing in Season 4? This doesn't work given the events that previously took place technically before this. And the whole thing with Thomas losing his branch line? Okay, why exactly did he lose it? It was never mentioned from Down the Mine. And what significance did it add to this particular story? Literally nothing. So what was even the point of mentioning that? Other than this gripe, I'll admit the best thing that this episode has going for it is once again its music. Particularly the outstanding piece of God Save the Queen by Mike and Jr.
The Queen's train glided into the station. Gordon was spotless and his brass shone brightly.
So, yeah, even though this shouldn't be in Season 4, it's still a pretty good episode for what it is. I'm giving it a solid 8 out of 10. On to our fourth episode, Bullseyes. Daisy boasts to Toby that she knows how to handle animals who stray onto the tracks. She is then sent to remove a bull named Champion when he strays away from his farm. Nothing Daisy does works, and Toby heads off to finish the job properly. And now here's our third uncommon episode. But hold on a sec here. This episode was what made Daisy afraid of bulls and cows, and it would have picked up in Percy's predicament. Again, why is this a continuation pushed back in a season that is meant, obviously, to be in Season 2? This is another that clearly doesn't work in the season that it's in. I understand that they're not going to be able to squeeze in every story they want in whatever season, but come on guys, this is a very noticeable screw-up. And if it wasn't made clear enough already, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Model Daisy. But if I had to pick, I'd rather watch this one way more than her debut episode. George's Daisy voice is, again, very funny to me, but again, I have to bring up, it doesn't save it entirely. And again, I have to point out, this is another that nothing really too major happens here. The plot just sounds a little simple. So yeah, I don't really have that much more to say with this one. Overall, I think it's just okay. 7 out of 10. And now with the fifth episode, Special Funnel. Continuing with the arc of Peter Sam's funnel, winter storms sweep the tracks away and are in need of immediate repair. Once finished, Peter Sam heads into a tunnel and ends up losing his wobbly funnel. To puff on, they wire a drain pipe and everyone teases him, but not until his new funnel arrives and he puffs on stronger than ever. Okay, well, back in the day, I was not exactly the biggest fan of this one either. There's not really that much of a story here. It's again pretty simple. It never really did anything for me, besides this one scene that did make me laugh.
Peter Sam said again and again, his new funnel will put us to shame. Went into the tunnel and lost his old funnel. Now his famous new funnel's a drain.
But it always was one of my least favorite narrow gauge stories. However, in due time, I did warm up to it a little more, and for the most part, the best I can really give it is, it's just okay. And I'll even admit, this actually looks like a standout Thomas episode, mainly for the scenery. It's just so natural looking because of the wintry atmosphere and what it does to the railway. And I can't even imagine how hard it must have been for Peter Sam to puff without a funnel until they found the drain pipe. And to be honest, his new funnel looks, again, more natural looking for his character. So yeah, it does have a few good positives. It's still not a favorite, but I'm at least more open-minded with it. 9 out of 10. Last but not least, we have our final episode, Four Little Engines. Sir Handel deals with some ill-tempered coaches and they pay him back by pushing him off the rails. Skarloey is then sent to finish the job, but he nearly breaks down in the process. However, he still continues to push on and is then rewarded with being mended at last. So this is the final of the uncommon episodes. Now, I really like this one because of Skarloey's determination to finish the job even when broken down. Remember how I said earlier that Rheneas had to get the passengers home or the railway would close down? Well, here's the difference. Rheneas pretty much didn't have a choice. He had to do it. Skarloey didn't have to do what he did. He wanted to do it, which is something I feel like earns a ton of respect.
I'll get them to the station or burst.
This episode was half the reason why Skarloey became my favorite narrow gauge engine. Now obviously there is something that kinda confuses me. Why is it called 4 Little Engines when the focus is partially on Sir Handel and the rest on Skarloey? Because even though it mentions Rheneas and Peter Sam, they don't really do anything. Why didn't they just call it Old Faithful Skarloey like in the Railway series? Would have made a lot more sense, don't you think? Ah well, despite that, I still adore this episode. By far, it is Skarloey's standout moment. 10 out of 10. And again, before we wrap this up, we still have our bonus music video. The Island Song. This song doesn't focus on any characters this time. Instead, it's just a song all about the island of Sodor. It describes the island, how children and adults have envisioned it, and how this magical place has made many, many dreams come true. Now, I can't be the only one who, after listening to this particular song, thought that the island of Sodor was a real place. It just knew how to capture everyone's imagination and continues to do so for many fans, which is what makes this song so iconic to the franchise. There's not even one word to describe how amazing this song truly is. The shots they even use for this video make it even more lovable. This will always be one of my top favorite songs, as it will for every other fan. So now what do I think about Meets the Queen? Okay, well, honestly, even though I originally had it ranked as my 4th favorite on my top 10 VHS list, really digging into these episodes, I'm starting to think this might be Season 4's weakest. Remember I said that I mainly liked this tape due to its rarity because of how it was never on DVD or that 4 just disappeared off future releases? But thinking it over, that does sound a bit vague, and to be honest, not that proper of an answer. I do still enjoy the tape, but given my ratings, I only think 3 of them are good, while the others I really don't care for, or are just okay. It's pretty much a mixed bag depending on how much you like these. Definitely the one thing that bugs me is the continuation issue with 2 of the 6. I still can't figure out why they pushed these 2 specific episodes back when they clearly don't work, compared to something like Elephant, which still oddly works. Yeah, if I'm gonna be completely honest here, as much as I love a majority of Season 4's episodes, it's not exactly all that perfect when pulling off moves such as this, because at the end of the day, it's just a complete jumbled up mess most of the time. Then again, I'm not gonna let that ruin the tape entirely because some of these stories did have their good moments. I guess depending on how any of you feel about these 6 will determine if you should get this tape or not. If you happen to like these, then have a ball getting the tape. But if you don't care for a lot of these, then I wouldn't bother. It's pretty much a 50-50 roll of the dice. And that does it for this tape review. I hope you guys enjoyed this double review. I will think about doing more of these in the near future. Now with the Christmas holiday closing in, I thought I'd review some Christmas-themed tapes. And I'm gonna kick the first week off pulling back to a classic Season 1 tape. See you guys next time!